statistical mechanics, and our aim is to understand our empirically arrived thermodynamic behavior of systems. So last time what we talked about was a random walk problem, because we wanted to understand what happens when you have a box in which gas is restricted only to half of this, and you lift the partition, and then as we all understand and we have common experience, the gas will in no time will spread in the entire box. Okay, and a typical situation is that if I put a partition back halfway through, half of the gas will be on the left half on the right half, and that is what we encounter. So what we did was we just took two systems, one with four molecules, the other was with 40 molecules, and we saw how that gets distributed. Uh, and then we wanted to understand. So we said, okay, look, we have only two partitions, left and right, which is equivalent to a drunkard making a walk, a random walk, where he'll take a step either forward or backward. All right. So there are only two possibilities. So, or if you toss a coin, there are only two possibilities, head or tail. So with that random walk, we went through some of the statistics, that what is the average number of steps he will end up taking in forward direction, average number of steps in backward direction, what will be his net displacement. Okay. Probability of forward step we took as P and backward as Q. What if both the probabilities are equal? And how much would be the fluctuation in comparison with our prediction? So what you see now on the screen is the first equation of binomial distribution. Are you able to see this? Huh?
Yes, sir.
Will tell me? Yes, very good. I would request all of you to sit with pen and paper and write things as if it's a classroom and you are copying from the board, because just looking at the equation you are likely to miss some small things here and there. So it's better that you keep writing simultaneously, and if I am little fast, somebody can point it out, that sir, just wait for a minute till we finish copying. Otherwise I'll keep on going and go to the next slide. You are all free to interrupt in between and ask for clarification if any of the point is not clear. We started with this binomial distribution, uh, in which we are saying that out of total n number of steps, small n is the number of steps taken in forward direction, and capital N minus small n are the number of steps taken in backward direction. So there is no third possibility. We are talking about a problem in which there are only two possibilities. And with these two possibilities, what is likelihood? Okay, so this is the probability of small n number of steps forward and n minus n backward. That small n could be anywhere from 0 to capital N. Okay, and accordingly you will have those factors, probabilities of that particular occurrence. And then what did we arrive? We said that, okay, look, the number of steps taken in forward direction will be capital N times P. P is the probability of taking steps forward. And obviously the backward would be capital N times Q. I mean, look at the symmetry of this expression. So it's obvious that it will be N times Q. So in that case, what is the net number of steps taken in forward direction? That will be, of course, the average of N1 minus N2. And that, as you can see, is N times P minus Q. Now, if P and Q both were half, then this will become 0. That means, of course, with the exception of odd number of steps for capital N. Uh, but in general, half of the steps the drunkard will take in forward direction, the other half he'll take in backward direction, because each one has equal probability. That's what is expected. If I toss large number of coins, I expect half of them to show head, half of them to show tail. That's what I'm talking about. And then fluctuation. So this is going to be your average value. So around the equilibrium or the average value. I mean, average is what you would observe when you have a large number of trials. I was just talking about the coins tossed. So if you toss 10 coins, of course, you expect 5 heads and 5 tails, but it may not happen. There may be fluctuations. You repeat this trial again and again. You'll see that the number of heads will fluctuate around 5. Okay, but the fluctuation could be very large. We saw that in case of a graph in case of 4 trials. So, but if I take 100 coins, okay, fluctuation will still be around 50, but with respect to 50, that fluctuation will be very small. And if I take 500 trials or 5,000 trials, then you will find very, very close to half number of heads and half number of tails. That's what. So that fluctuation turns out to be proportional to 1 upon square root of n. So fluctuation becomes essentially very, very small when your system becomes very, very large. And when we talk about thermodynamic situation, we are dealing with a number of molecules as many as Avogadro's number. So almost 10 raised to 23, 24 molecules. And in that case, your fluctuation will be very tiny, almost 10 raised to minus 12, okay, compared to the mean value. So if I take uh, gas molecules, and I want to hypothetically see how many are on the left and how many are on the right, then on an average, my probability calculation says half should be on the left, half should be on the right. And the fluctuation around that half, that means n by 2 molecule, is so tiny that most of the time I observe, most means it's a big fraction of time. I mean, there is hardly any time when I see anything worse than that. Uh, so half of them on the left and half of them on the right. I mean, if at all there is a fluctuation, there are few molecules here and there. In 10 raised to 24 molecules, that hardly matters. So I have plotted this binomial distribution for n as large as 100. And you can see here, I showed you last time also this curve. The peak is at 50. That means the highest probability is for a small n number of steps taken in forward direction to be 50. Okay? And then as you go away, you see it rapidly drops down. And if you see beyond 30 or beyond 70 on the right hand side, there is hardly any probability values visible, which means those are going to be very unlikely. This peak becomes sharper and sharper if you start increasing n. And then this is just 10 raised to 2. Just imagine if you go to 10 raised to 24. So it's going to be, average is going to be almost n by 2. Now, here is a case where you can see the fluctuation around n by 2 value. And as n becomes very large, this tiny jiggling around n by 2 value will not be even noticeable most of the time. Now, we want to take up one small problem of a magnetic system. If I take a magnetic system with a spin half system, okay, in this case, we'll not worry about that it is spin half, but we'll say that, okay, spin half, because spin half, there are only two possibilities, spin up or spin down projection. So if I apply a magnetic field, a spin half particle will have spin either aligned parallel to magnetic field or opposite to magnetic field. So in this case, we are taking without mentioning spin half, but only two possibilities. So if I apply a magnetic field, uh, okay, moment of each spin has a probability of 0.51 pointing parallel to magnetic field and 0.49 pointing anti-parallel to magnetic field. So if each spin corresponds to magnetic moment mu zero, then for a system of n particles, what I expect you to do is calculate mean magnetic moment of the system. Okay, so basically, if you calculate average number of particles pointing in the direction of magnetic field, average number of particles pointing opposite to magnetic field, so net number of particles pointing in the direction of magnetic field, that net is going to give you net magnetic moment. So that net number you should multiply with mu zero, and you will get your mean magnetic moment of the system. And of course, you must estimate fluctuation in this magnetic moment that you estimate. And what will this fluctuation be in case of 100 spins or 10 raised to 24 spins? In real life crystal, if you apply magnetic field and if this is going to happen, then you are dealing with 10 raised to 24. Okay, now so here I am showing you this distribution when P and Q both are half and n is equal to 4. you can see that the average number of spins pointing in the direction of magnetic field is 2. Opposite to magnetic field will be 2. So your net will be 0. Now, if you go to the next one, uh, in this case, we are dealing with very large number of particles. Okay, sorry, I just had to put it for charging. Uh, so there are 20 particles, and you are seeing that 10 will be aligned along the magnetic field, and 10 will be aligned opposite to magnetic field. Okay. Oh, not responding. Yeah, just bear with me a while. Something got hung up in the system. So, are you all paying attention to what I am doing? Are you all able to understand what I am talking about? Hello? Who would answer this? Shubham?
Yes,
Hello?
sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
हाँ जो जो हम डिस्कस कर रहे हैं समझ में आ रहा है ना?
सर आपने जो एग्जांपल लिया था ना सॉल्व करने को आपने दिया था ना उसका सेकंड ग्राफ तक ही समझा, बाद में साइलेंस था पूरा।
नहीं, वो तो मुझे पता है ना, वही तो मैं कोशिश कर रहा हूँ।
हाँ सर, हाँ
तो
उधर तक समझा।
पीपी पीपी वहां तक तो समझ में आया ना?
हाँ सर।
हाँ, so we are just trying to start this PPT again. So ये ग्राफ था आपके सामने, ठीक है? हेलो तालुंग के,
सर स्क्रीन शेयरिंग ऑफ हो गया लगता है आपका।
ऐसा है क्या?
हाँ सर।
ओके, लेट्स सी स्क्रीन शेयरिंग। अभी आपको मेरा स्क्रीन दिख रहा है जिसमें आपके सबके नाम लिखे हुए हैं?
हाँ सर दिख रहे हैं।
अभी दिख रहा है पीपीटी?
पीपीटी
full chicken.
पीपीटी नहीं दिख रहे हैं।
नहीं सर।
वो जो स्लाइड दिखा रहा था मैग्नेटिक सिस्टम का?
नहीं सर।
ओके, लेट मी ट्राई अगेन। अभी दिख रही है मेरी स्क्रीन?
नहीं सर, वही दिख रहा है, फिर से हमारे लोगो दिख रहे हैं।
Okay.
सर आपका ये शुरू हो गया है, स्क्रीन शेयरिंग शुरू हो गया है, आप प्रेजेंटेशन ऑन कीजिए ना।
हाँ, वो तो बराबर है, लेकिन प्रेजेंटेशन ऑन करने के लिए आ, अभी प्रेजेंटेशन से कुछ दिख रहा है आपको?
नहीं सर,
एक
वो
मिनट,
मीट
मैंने
वाला
अभी
ही
फुल
दिख रहा है।
स्क्रीन पे जा रहा हूँ।
नो सर।
अभी मैं, कैन यू सी माई स्लाइड?
नो सर।
आर यू एबल टू सी माई स्लाइड?
नो सर।
नो सर।
ओके,
नो सर।
okay, just hang on. Hang on. अब मेरी स्क्रीन दिख रही है, पावर पॉइंट? हेलो?
हाँ सर, यस सर, दिख रही।
अब अभी दिख रहा है ना? ओके,
हाँ
यस
सर।
ओके,
सर।
वेरी गुड.
यस सर।
Yeah, so this is the one we were seeing. Okay, now we go to the next one. Okay. Uh, Okay, so what you see is with 10 particles. Okay, in this case, we are saying that both the probabilities are equal. So you have five. Okay, sorry. In this case, what we are saying is probabilities are not equal. Okay, in this problem, the assumption is P is 0.7 and Q is 0.3. Remember the problem I gave you, P was 0.51 and Q was 0.49. But in this case, P is 0.7 and Q is 0.3. So the average value of M, which is N times P minus Q, if you remember the equation, do you have your pen and paper in front of you so that you can see the equation?
यस सर।
Average value of M for Mumbai is capital N times P minus Q. So P is 0.7, Q is 0.3, P minus Q is 0.4, 10 times 0.4 is 4. So average value of small m will be 4. So you can see here that the average value here, the probability is peaking at net magnetic moment aligned in the direction of magnetic field to be 4. Okay, the next is for n equal to 20, same problem. So it will simply double because it is capital N times P minus Q. So in this case, it is 8. And in this case, it's 30. So it will be 16. Uh, I'm sorry, 30 will be 12, sorry, 12. And in this case, it is 50. So you should have around 20. So the peak is around 20. I mean, it's very simple that way. Okay, so we are talking about n spin half particles uh, because of presence of applied magnetic field, P equal to 0.7 and K equal to 0.3. Okay, now what we are trying to do is we want to evaluate some standard integrals, and these are going to be very important because I don't know, today again it's getting hung up again and again. Uh, Yes. So we want, this is an integral which we will be using and we will be needing again and again in many of the calculations. So let's say integration is of e raised to minus ax square dx. Now, I don't know whether you know how to evaluate this integral, but this is not a straightforward integration. So I'm going to show you how to evaluate it with some tricks and the other integrals which are based on the same integral which you are seeing on the screen. So since that's Ix, I can write Iy as integration of minus infinity to infinity of e raised to minus ay square dy. So if I multiply the two integrals Ix, Iy, it will be the product of two integrals. Then I can take all of them together. So I have got minus infinity to infinity e raised to minus ax square minus ay square dx dy, which I can write like this. Now, this we want to evaluate. So what we will say is, look, I am integrating over entire xy plane. Okay, we are giving it meaning. Although it's just a mathematical exercise, we are giving meaning to this integral. Okay, that we are evaluating this integral over entire xy plane. I can tell you, see, if you plot e raised to minus ax square, you should learn to do this. Either if you have your calculator application, then you can just take e raised to minus x square and see what it looks like. It will be a bell-shaped curve. Or you have to learn to go and do it in Excel, which will be very easy. Again, you can just plot e raised to minus x square and see what it looks like. So if in one dimension it looks like a bell shape, you can imagine it would be actual bell if you plot it in xy plane. Okay, so in x direction also, you see at x equal to 0, it will peak and then it will just drop down like a bell. Y also it will. So in all directions, as you go away from origin, it will drop like a bell. So it's actually a bell-shaped curve. But now this has become a two-dimensional integral. So what we are going to do with the two-dimensional integral is, we will transform our integration from Cartesian coordinate system to circular polar coordinate system, from x, y to r theta. So in that case, my area element, which is dx dy, will now become r dr d theta. Is everyone familiar with circular polar coordinate system? If I take point P, whose coordinates are x and y, then the distance of point P from origin is r. So that will be r is square root of x square plus y square. And the line joining point P and the origin makes angle theta with x-axis. So theta is actually tan inverse of y by x. Now in a Cartesian system, if I want to take area element, I take increment in x, which is dx. I take increment in y, which is dy. Both have dimensions of length. So when I go from area to another area, if I take increment in r, it will be dr. But if I take increment in theta, it is simply d theta. So if I want actually length, that length corresponding to increment in theta is r d theta. So my area element becomes dr into r d theta. That's what is written in front of you. But as I said, OP, yeah, the distance from origin r is root x square plus y square. So this x square plus y square will become r square. And therefore, this integral will now simply change into e raised to minus ar square r dr d theta. Now limit of integration for x and y, if you want to cover entire xy plane, is minus infinity to plus infinity. But r theta coordinates, r goes only from 0 to infinity, but theta will go from 0 to 2 pi, so all around the origin, and therefore it will cover entire xy plane. So my limit of r integration is 0 to infinity and theta integration is 0 to 2 pi. Now since there is nothing depends on theta, I can simply evaluate to d theta, that will be 2 pi. Now e raised to minus ar square can be evaluated very easily. You just put r square equal to u. Okay, your limit of integration will still remain 0 to infinity for u, and r dr will be half of du. So you will have this integral for r reducing to half u du. Uh, Sorry, half of so r dr will become half of du only. Okay, so you will have e raised to minus au into half du. E raised to minus au is very simple to integrate. E raised to minus au, if you take it from 0 to infinity, will be simply 1 by a. So since there is half du, it will be 1 by 2a, and your d theta will give you 2 pi. So half, uh, sorry, so 1 by 2a into 2 pi will give you pi by a. So that's the integral. You can actually do the evaluation and tell me. We will not spend time here, but I would request that make sure that you are able to evaluate at least e raised to minus ar square into r dr integral. Or you want me to wait till you people can try and see that it's actually going to have the value pi by a? Hello, Roshan, can you people hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good. So can you evaluate this integral e raised to minus ar square into r dr from 0 to infinity? I'm also giving you a hint. Take r square equal to u. Just quickly evaluate, see what you are getting. Shouldn't take more than a minute. Are you writing simultaneously all the equations?
Yes, sir.
Don't count my sending PDF. PDF से आपका कुछ नहीं होगा. You have to learn to write. You can't do physics by just looking at PDF. Is Dhaval present here?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
हाँ, करा evaluate करो इंटीग्रल क्या मिलता है देखो.
Yes, sir.
हाँ, हर्षदीप है क्या नहीं?
Yes, sir.
Yes, please evaluate. नीलकंठ है क्या नहीं?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good. And Miss Jadhav?
Yes, sir.
Whoever finishes evaluation integral, let me know.
Done, sir.
Integration of e raised to minus au du will be e raised to minus au divided by minus a. Evaluated from 0 to infinity will give you 1 by a. There was already a half sitting there. So you get 1 by 2a. Theta integral will give you 2 pi. Yes, Lorita, did you finish integral?
Sir, I'm doing it.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Who finished it?
Sir, I.
Mm, who? I means who?
Salunke.
Oh, Salunke. You got pi by a?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir, done, sir.
Okay, very good. So I assume all of you will be able to do because it's a very simple one. So now see my integral ix and iy both have the same value. See, x and y are dummy variable. Once you integrate any substitute limit of integration, both ix and iy will give you the same value. So when I take ix into iy, actually what I have is I square. So I square is pi by a, I will be root pi by a. Okay. So basically what it means is that my integration of e raised to minus ax square dx gives me root pi by a. Now, if I am evaluating this from 0 to infinity for value of x, what will happen is it means I am covering only half of the plane. So 0 to infinity means x equal to 0 to infinity, right hand side of y axis, nothing on the left hand side. And if I had evaluated the same thing with iy also, it will be just above x axis, nothing below x axis. So all my integration is restricted to first quadrant. Okay, where x and y have positive value, which means my theta value will now not be 0 to 2 pi, it will be only 0 to pi by 2. So if I take theta only 0 to pi by 2 instead of 2 pi, my answer will be reduced by factor of 4. And if I take square root, it will be reduced by 2. That's one way of seeing it. Second is e raised to minus ax square is an even function. It's a bell-shaped integral, bell-shaped function. So when you say integral, it means you are calculating area under the curve. Since it's an even function, it has same value for positive x and negative x. If I evaluate only from 0 to plus infinity, I am talking only about half of the value. The other half is on the other side. It's a symmetric. Even function means it's a symmetric function. And therefore, uh, I will be showing you in next one or two slides as we go further what this shape looks like when I say bell-shaped curve. But the point is, I will get half of that value. So if I evaluate this integral from 0 to infinity here, as you see, then I should get half of root pi by. Next, if I want to evaluate x times e raised to minus ax square from minus infinity to plus infinity, then this will be 0 because the moment I put x times e raised to minus x square, it's an odd function, which means for positive values of x, it will have positive values, negative value of x, it will have negative value. So if I perform an integration, the each positive value will tend to cancel each negative value. So odd function integral from minus infinity to plus infinity will be 0. But if I want to evaluate it from 0 to infinity, x e raised to minus ax square dx, this integration will have to be actually performed. Okay, remember it's almost the same integral as what you have performed here, right? You had e raised to minus ar square r dr. Here you have e raised to minus ax square x dx. Same integration. So there you got pi by, sorry, where you got 1 by 2a. So even this integral will have a value of 1 by 2a. You have already performed this integral. But if it was minus infinity to infinity, that value will become 0.
सर एक मिनट वो
Okay.
स्लाइड दिखा ना, लास्ट पार्ट रहेगी
क्या?
लास्ट पार्ट.
Last line.
हाँ.
So you can see this.
Yes sir.
And the comment here below that says that uh, similarly evaluate for all odd powers with respect to x. Now it is so obvious that if for one odd power it is 0 minus infinity to plus infinity, then for all odd powers minus infinity to plus infinity will give you 0. But 0 to infinity will have to be evaluated. So this you take as a homework, that evaluate x cube and x raised to 5 e raised to minus x square dx from 0 to infinity. See what you get. From based on whatever we have done so far, you should be able to evaluate these things.
हो गया सर.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Dhaval. Next, I can go to the next slide. hung up again. Okay, that's the next slide we want to see. Yes, are you all able to see this? हेलो, आप लोगों को मेरा स्क्रीन दिख रहा है?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So now odd power we established that minus infinity to infinity will give me 0. Even powers we have to work out. So if I have x square times e raised to minus ax square, the trick here is, as you see on the screen, I will write x square times e raised to minus ax square as minus d by dA e raised to minus ax square. Remember, if I take a derivative of e raised to minus ax square with respect to a, not x. Okay. Suppose you treat a as a parameter, some variable, some kind of variable. And if I integrate, differentiate with respect to a, it will give me minus x square outside. And that minus sign with this minus sign will go away and I will have x square times e raised to minus x square. Now, since my integration is with respect to dx, there is no harm in putting differentiation with respect to a outside, because differentiation is with respect to a, integration is with respect to x. They are two independent entities. So now if I write minus d by dA of this integral, whose value we already know is root pi by a. So you take derivative of root pi by a with respect to a, and that's what you will get. If you have any doubt, please evaluate it yourself and confirm. I'm giving you a minute. It should not take more than a minute to confirm what I'm talking about. भंडारी जी,
हाँ सर.
just देखो, are you getting the same answer as what I have got? आपको जो बताया मैंने, वो समझने में किसी को मुश्किल हुई क्या? That x square e raised to minus ax square is equivalent to taking derivative of e raised to minus ax square with respect to a. So I am assuming that all of you agree with what I mentioned, and therefore we can actually differentiate the integral and get the answer. Yes. Who else is remaining? Mayuri है क्या नहीं?
Yes, sir.
Did you get this
Hello.
answer?
No, sir. Try कर रही हूँ.
अरे रूट पाई बाय ए को आपको a से डिफरेंशिएट करना है. तो रूट पाई इज ए कांस्टेंट, यू टेक इट आउटसाइड. Root 1 upon a is a raised to minus half. So if you differentiate with respect to a, you are differentiating d by d, you are taking d by dA of a raised to minus half. थोड़ा जल्दी कीजिए, नहीं तो आज जो टारगेट है वो कंप्लीट नहीं हो पाएगा. यस रोशन. Hello, Roshan, are you there? All right. Uh, Harshdeep, are you there?
Yes, sir.
हाँ. Are you able to get the answer?
ये सर कर रहा हूँ मैं.
Kawal,
हाँ सर,
मिला आंसर?
कर रहा हूँ सर, कर रहा हूँ.
आया सर.
अरे, are you able, all you have to do is just take one simple derivative. How long does it take?
सर आया सर, आया हुआ सर.
Payal?
Yes, sir. Done, sir.
Done. Very good. Chalo. Now I am moving forward one step further. Uh, so, and all other even powers can be evaluated similarly. So, instead of x square, suppose if I have x raised to 4, then I'll take 2 times derivative with respect to a. Of course, both are negative, so but 2 negative will become positive. So, with x raised to 4, instead of x square here, in this expression where you have x square, instead of this, if I have x raised to 4, then I have to write 2 derivative with respect to a of the same integral. If I have x raised to 6, then I will have minus times uh, 3 derivative with respect to a, and you will be able to evaluate it. And since these are all even integrals, if you have to evaluate 0 to infinity, it will be just half of what you have got. So if this integration has to be evaluated from 0 to infinity, it will be 1 by 4 times it. So many of these integrals are used in physics at various places, and you should not miss out. You don't have to memorize them. If you can evaluate quickly, it will be very handy. Now I'm giving you an exercise. I'm giving you an expression, Wx. Uh, you have to tell me whether it is normalized. You know what meaning of normalization is? The meaning of normalization is if I integrate it from minus infinity to plus infinity with respect to x, it should give me 1. So who is going to do it quickly? Fastest finger first. Yes, is Roshan there or we have lost him? Hello, Roshan.
सर वो चैट बॉक्स में लिख रहा है, शायद उसका माइक में प्रॉब्लम है.
Okay, okay. I won't be able to see chat box because my full screen is utilized here. Uh, okay. Yes, Salung K. Could you check whether if it is normalized?
हाँ सर, कर रहा हूँ.
अरे बेटा इतना टाइम नहीं लगता है. इंस्टेड ऑफ ए यू हैव 1/2 एनपीक्यू, तो आपको सीधे स्टैंडर्ड फॉर्मूला में ही सब्स्टिट्यूट करना है. हाँ जी, yeah, who said it? One आया ना? It's very simple. I mean, all you had to do was your standard result. You had to substitute a equal to 1/2 npq, and you should get this one. So this is normalized. This second part, I am giving you homework. Third, also I am giving you homework. I've already told you that you can evaluate even powers of x. Yeah, there is a printing mistake. It should be I equal to integration of minus infinity to plus infinity. Okay, in the fourth one. What you see here, the lower limit should be minus infinity. There is a minus sign missing. Okay, now so I already showed you how you are going to get the expressions. So let's look at the continuous distribution for large n. So whatever we considered as a binomial distribution, uh, uh, again hung up. Let's see, where were we? Okay, so we will go over to the next slide. Okay, so are you able to see my screen now? You have again expression for probability of a binomial distribution. Yes, who can answer it? हर्ष, दिख रहा है ना स्क्रीन आपको?
Yes, sir.
हेलो,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
okay, good. Yeah, fine. So that's your binomial distribution. Now we are talking about saying that, let's say, okay, yeah, good. So now we'll change the meaning of m. You know, earlier we used m for n minus n1 minus n2. So number of steps taken in forward direction minus number of steps taken in backward direction was the net number of steps in forward direction. Now that was the variable m. I would have to use some Greek alphabet. So instead I am just putting m only here. So let's say this distribution has maximum at n equal to m, and that w decreases rapidly as you go away from m. Okay, maximum, for example, when p was equal to q, you know that maximum was at n by 2. Uh, uh, I'm sure you all remember, we have seen enough number of graphs now that the peak of binomial distribution for p equal to q is at small n equal to capital N by 2, half of the total number of trials or number of particles or number of tosses in case of coins, or in case of a magnetic system, a total number of spins, half of total number of spins. Okay, if P is equal to Q. But if P is not Q, then you saw that that graph also I showed you that the peak turns out to be at n times P minus Q. Okay, so we are saying that in this case, the peak is at n equal to m. And then as you go away from m value, n equal to m value, uh, it decreases rapidly, which is also true when your capital N is very large, as I showed you that the curve becomes sharper and sharper. Now, when your n is very large, then making a change from n to n plus 1 or n to n minus 1 is a very small change compared to capital N. And therefore, my W should not change much. That's what is reflected in this equation. When I say w at n plus 1 minus w at n, the difference is very, very small compared to the actual value of wn. So in that case, we can treat w as a continuous function of n. Remember, 10 raised to 24 is a very large number. So n equal to 1 is very small. We can treat those changes by steps of 1 as a continuous change. Uh, and it has maximum when dw by dn is equal to 0. Okay, which is as good as saying that derivative of log w is 0. So if w is maximum, log w is monotonically increasing function of w. So even log w will be maximum. So wherever w is maximum, log w will also be maximum. The reason we are taking log will be very clear when you look at some of the steps. Now we will say let n is equal to m plus x. You remember m was the value of n where the w has maximum value. So x is just a deviation from that value. So x could be positive or negative. You have gone from that most probable position of n equal to n in the forward direction or backward direction. Okay, and w has maximum at n equal to n. In that case, log w can be expanded around w can be expanded around m value. So log of w of n will become log of w of m plus the Taylor series, right? So this is like I have a function at x. This is function at x0 plus something times x, something times x square, something times x cube, and so on, where these coefficients are nothing but the kth derivative. And these are those k factorials. So first derivative 1 factorial in the denominator, second derivative 2 factorial, third derivative 3 factorial, and so on. So you have this expression. I suppose there should not be any confusion about this. All I have written is just the Taylor series. Is there anyone who has a difficulty with this treatment so far? Then I will go further. Can I assume that so far everything is fine? हर्षदीप, यहाँ तक आपको समझ में आ रहा है?
Yes, sir.
आप लोग लिख रहे हैं ये steps? Please write them down. Please write them down. Last moment memorize कर लेंगे, ऐसे मत छोड़ देना उसको. I want you to understand the calculation. So this is my w, and I'm taking log of w of n, which I can expand around m, the difference being x. So wm, so that is f of x0 plus first derivative times x plus second derivative upon 2 factorial times x plus third derivative upon 3 factorial times x, and so on. So this is derivative. So if w has a maximum at n is equal to m, then the first derivative has to be 0 at n equal to m. So all these derivatives are evaluated at n equal to m value. So first derivative is 0, there is no first term. We will have only second term. Second point is, if w has a maximum, then the second derivative has to be negative. Just recollect your maxima minima from your 12th standard. Where is the function maximum? Function is maximum at those values of x where function first derivative is 0. And whether it could be maximum or minimum. So first derivative is 0 tells you that at that value of x, function has either maximum or minimum. If the second derivative is positive, function has a minimum. And if second derivative is negative, then the function has maximum. In this case, we are talking about maximum. M is a maximum. So first derivative is 0 and second derivative has to be negative. So I'm explicitly saying that this term has to have a negative sign. Rest of the terms you can ignore, saying that look, the higher order derivatives are going to be negligible. In that case, what will happen is the following. So in that case, I can write Wx as W0, which is value of W at M, okay, times e raised to minus half B2 x square. And as x is small, higher terms with k greater than 2 can be neglected. Then log Wn, okay. Log of Wn, you remember what was Wn? N capital N factorial upon small n factorial, capital N minus small n factorial, p raised to n, q raised to n minus m. Then log Wn will become whatever is in the numerator, those logs are added, and whatever is in denominator, those logs are to be subtracted. A small correction. This term here, the one with log p should have a positive sign. Now, the derivative of log of n factorial, uh, 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 if you take dn, in this case, you remember your n was originally discrete. You just said we'll treat it as continuous, but it was discrete. So dn will be 1. Okay. In that case, what you are talking about is log of n plus 1 factorial upon n factorial divided by 1. See, log a minus log b is log of a upon b. That's what we have done here. All right. And then n factorial will cancel out. So you are left with log of n plus 1. For a very large value of n, 1 is almost negligible. So this is almost same as log n. What happens in that case? In that case, my log wx, I can write when I take log wx and I take derivative d log w by dn. Remember, capital N is constant because n is number of trials. Small n is not constant because the number of outcomes in positive direction and negative direction will vary. Okay, or to the left and right will vary. Number of heads and tail will vary. So since we already said that the derivative is equivalent to log n, so minus log n factorial derivative will give me minus log n. N minus n will give me log of n minus n. The derivative of this with respect to n will simply be log p. Remember, there was a sign difference here. This should have been positive. So plus log p minus log q. And first derivative must be equal to 0 when your n is equal to m. So in that case, you can club all of this together and you say, okay, look, my this quantity is 0. And then if you simplify, it will give you small m is equal to np. So even when you are treating it as a continuous distribution, it matches with your earlier calculation of binomial distribution. Then your B2 is second derivative of W with respect to N. Now this is exclusively homework for you and I would like you to carry it out. Will be minus 1 upon N, 1 upon P plus 1 by Q, and that will be minus 1 by NPQ. Okay, you can take two derivative of W and then see. This is log W, okay? You have to take two derivatives. And in that case, your e raised to minus half b2 x square will actually fall rapidly as you go away from the mean value of np. Remember, this is the equation which you have already evaluated. Bell-shaped curve, e raised to minus x square, all the integrals we have worked out with. That should not be a problem. And in that case, that summation of W, remember, the total probability is 1. So summation should have given you 1. In this case, if you treat it as a continuous variable, that summation will become an integration. And that integration should give you 1. And if integration gives you 1, then the integration of this should give you 1, which tells you that the constant of proportionality, which is W0, should be root of B2 upon 2 pi. Remember, B2 is already evaluated. So you can use that value of B2 and you have got the Wn. This distribution is called Gaussian distribution. What is importance of this? So you started with binomial distribution and you say if n is very large and the small changes around equilibrium are more like a continuous variation, then you can treat your distribution as a Gaussian distribution. And remember, we are talking about a random walk problem. our gas molecules also perform random motion. So I am correlating it with a diffusion equation in 3 dimension, which is also Gaussian. You can see it's exactly similar one, e raised to minus r square upon 4 dt. D is the diffusion coefficient. Then this integral will be 1. Okay, so it's a spread of the function. So if I put an ink drop in water, that ink drop will spread slowly in water with time. So with in r and in time. So that function represents the spread of that. So in a way, you can see this random walk is just like the random spread of the ink droplets within the medium. In 1 dimension also, diffusion equation has the same form. It's just that the constant here is slightly different, but the normalization will give you 1. Okay, now we are almost at the end of 1 hour. So the property of Gaussian distribution we will talk later. I'll just repeat what we did. We just reviewed our binomial distribution, which we use for random walk, toss of a coin, or gas molecules going to the left or right of the partition. And then we checked some of the integrals related to Gaussian integral e raised to minus ax square. And then we have shown that in a limit of very large value of n, large number of trials, large number of molecules, okay, large number of tosses of the coin, large number of magnetic spins, spin half particles. This distribution, binomial distribution, can be treated as a Gaussian distribution, and the Gaussian distribution in the limits is almost the same as what we know in the diffusion. We have still not established that that actually represents diffusion, but we are fairly close to understanding. So the reason why we are calling this a statistical mechanics, that now we have a hope that by doing some statistical calculations, I may be able to reproduce thermodynamic behavior of the system. So that's where I am going to end today's class, and we'll take it up from here on Thursday when we meet at 10 o'clock. So thank you very much. For more information about our activity and videos, you can visit our website, infinitelearning.org. I would also request you to subscribe our YouTube channel, Dr. Modi's Infinite Learning, if you are interested, so that you can get the information about new videos which are being posted.